right, we're reviewing class 7 interfaces. True or false? Polymorphism is the concept of using different kinds of objects in the same way. Okay, that was true. Yeah, inheritance is the idea of using objects of the same kind, but slightly, possibly using them in different ways. And polymorphism, you can do some polymorphism through class inheritance, but interfaces is the main way to do it. So yeah, different kinds of objects, but using them in the same way. That's polymorphism. All right, Matt's in the lead. If you create a used book object, but give it the type of its base class book, how do you call a method of the subclass? Gave you guys plenty of time on this one. All right, on to 5 seconds, guys. Yeah, okay, this was tricky. We covered it in lecture, and it's covered in your book actually in the previous chapter. But the idea here is that get condition is actually a property of used book, right? The subclass. And get condition is its getter. And if you have declared a used book object of the type book, the parent class or base class, you have to actually cast it to a type of the subclass in order to access that getter. So the reason you have to have those extra parentheses there, if you think about it, is because you have to cast it first and then call the method on the finished product there. So you want to cast used book to, some used book, and then take that entire thing and call get condition. So that's a little bit unusual syntax. You'll only come across it so often, but it's good to understand how that works. So wanted to throw that in there. Okay, NW in the lead. True or false? You can instantiate objects of an interface just like you do a class. Yeah, that's false. Interfaces cannot have objects created from them, just classes. Okay, which is not a valid member of an interface? Good job. Yeah. So along the same lines, if you can't instantiate an object from an interface, it means you can't have instance methods because you have no access to the specific information that each object would have. That's, one is different from the next. So good job. Okay. NW retains the lead. True or false? If a class implements an interface, it must fulfill any behaviors the interface requires. True. Great. Yeah. That's kind of the point of an interface, really, is to ensure that any class that implements it has all of the methods that it requires, so that you have consistent behavior with the same names of the methods and the same signatures of the methods across the board for lots of different objects of different classes. All right. Quiz. Which keyword is used to assign an interface to a class? Great job. Yeah, implements. When we talk about classes and inheritance, we talk about extending a base class. But when we talk about interfaces, we talk about them being implemented by a class. So implements is the correct word. Okay, true or false? The class can implement multiple classes. That should say interfaces. Oh no, multiple classes. Crap. Should have read the whole thing first. Yeah, it's false, which I kind of gave away because I, wasn't reading through all the way. Yeah, a class can implement multiple interfaces, but it can only extend one class. And I did put an example of that in the lecture questions channel in case somebody wants to see how that's done. Which annotation do you use to define a method that is required by an interface? Yeah, good job. So interfaces have, static methods, abstract methods, just like an abstract class does. And if you want to, you have to with an interface, but if you're overriding that to actually have a definition, a body to that, matching the signature of the interface, you use override. All right, true or false? The IntelliJ generator can be used to add method signatures required by an interface that has been implemented. That's true. Good job. It's very helpful. Yeah, and I demonstrated it during class if you want to go back to the video and take a look. Okay, what is the best way to test methods required by interfaces? Yeah, great job. Really, tests are always associated with the class that can, you can create objects from it. You can, call methods on those objects, have test data. So you wouldn't really ever write unit tests for the interface itself, but you do want to test that everything has been implemented correctly if it's something the interface requires. And I did demonstrate that during the lecture as well. Okay, that was it. So let's see how everybody did. Third place, NW. Second place, Cuban. Cuban sandwich, I like it. Amy, congrats, Amy. Runners up, Maple and Adam S. All right. Okay, so so tonight we're talking about Spring with controllers and routing. So this is a big shift to build on all the basics you've learned, but it's really the beginning of web development with Java. We're going to talk about that in a second. Well, we have a classic format tonight. We'll do lecture, you'll go to studio, and then we'll come back for studio review. Reminder that there's a Q&A on Thursday, but there's not, this is a catch-up class. And I think Collins might have somebody come in with him to answer questions about liftoff. And so that'll be good. Deadline for graded assignment 2 is the 13th. Go ahead and get started on that if you haven't already. And then the Unit 2 student survey, Colin posted about this earlier with the link and everything. Get it done by this Friday, sooner if you can. It's very helpful for me, and I know also for your TAs, to have your feedback. In Unit 1, there were a number of things that came back for me that, I implemented some changes in the way I was presenting my information and the way I was handling questions in class and all of that based on the feedback I got from you guys. And I actually already have some feedback from some of you guys from this unit, just because, Java is a whole new animal, and a lot of the things that we're talking about can get really complex really fast. And I also, I'm going through a lot of material really, really fast in the limited, I have an hour, less than when we're doing Kahoot quizzes. So I am going to make an effort to try to keep things as simple as possible. It's a hard line for me to walk because I really want you guys to have like good examples that are good use cases. They're not too abstracted. They actually show you, like, this is an example of how this would be used in the real world. I mean, and it's still, obviously very simple compared to like a really massive code base, but I also don't want to overwhelm you. It's a difficult, line to walk, but I'm going to do my best on that. And I definitely appreciate any feedback you have for me, because I want you guys to succeed. That's why we are here. And I want to, do things in a way that I can help most of you succeed, all of you succeed, but I'm just saying, like, everybody learns differently, and it's hard to meet everybody where they're at in a class with people with such diverse backgrounds. That's kind of part of the struggle we face here at Launch Code. We want to do the best for all of you, but we have to, find some happy middle, and it's hard sometimes. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the actual lecture. Let's talk about it. So Spring is a new tool that we have for a new design pattern, the MVC pattern. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about kind of, how we're shifting the way we use Java, this MVC pattern, and how Spring Boot with Gradle gets set up and works. So you already know the basics of Java. You know how to run a program in a console. That's great. What about web applications, right? You're going to learn how to run a Java web application. And so you'll be able to, send content to the browser to be displayed on a page. I'm like making hand motions way off screen over here, and you guys can't even see it. It's just kind of funny. Okay, receive information from a user, and then update the view in the browser based on, information you might have received. You can create a somewhat dynamic experience. So Java web applications would be insanely complex if you had to do them from scratch, which is why we use frameworks. So we're going to use Spring Boot, which is built on Spring, and Gradle specifically will be the build tool that's used. And Tomcat is something that's built into it that is actually the server that gives you a place to go, in your browser to see the program being run. Okay, so let's talk about this MVC pattern. It's all about managing the flow of the data. So this is very common for Java web applications, and it's broken down into 3 parts: model, view, and controller. The model handles the logic and the manipulation of the data. So it's like where you have your classes and a whole bunch of other things that you'll learn about in the next few weeks. A view is what handles the page elements and the interaction with the user in the browser. So we just kind of generally refer to that as the view, and that's where, you know, your templates come in with the HTML and all of that. A controller is the go-between. It's the, I think your book calls it a traffic cop, which is, I think, a pretty good, you know, way to look at it. It basically allows you to set up, you know, a place for the browser to reach out to, and then also knows how to interact with all of the logic and the data on the back end. I mean, it's all back end at that point, but controller is part of the back end, just to be clear. But yeah, to reach out to the model portion to, you know, request data, to update data, and then receive that response and send it back to the view. So you can kind of see this flow here. I'm clicking and nothing's happening. Hold on. There we go. Yeah, the fourth part here that I've kind of got off to gray, in gray off to the side, is a database. So that would allow you to have persistence where, you know, things can actually be saved, and the next time you come back to the application, they're still there. We're not there yet, but we'll get there. Brad, you got a question?
Yeah, so like in the real world, would the view possibly be another language like a React or Angular app?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Well, yes, sort of. I mean, you could look at it that way. Because it's essentially that is what you're doing. You have a front end, and it does have to have some extra logic associated with it, like, you know, all of the TypeScript and things like that. But ultimately, it's making those calls to the back end, and that's essentially to your controllers. So yeah, that's exactly what it would be.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah. So Spring Boot with Gradle. We're going to talk I'm going to walk you through this like sort of kind of, but I just want to preface this by saying the textbook has videos built into it that walk you through this step by step. If you have not gone and done that yet, do it, because Chris Bay is amazing. He's one of the original guys that kind of helped set a lot of the curriculum and examples and things for Launch Code in the beginning, and it's got a very soothing voice, easy to listen to, and yeah, he walks you through it. So I'm going to kind of, you know, have some bullet points here that are for your information if you come back and you use the lecture slides as a resource later. But I'm also going to demonstrate it for you and just kind of take you through it briefly, but not like super slow like he does. There's no reason. I got other things that I can spend time in lecture, and he's already done a great job of that. Okay, and I've already said enough about that. Okay, so yeah, you go to start.spring.io. You're going to select the Groovy version of Gradle, select Java, and keep Spring Boot 3.x is currently what they kind of have as the default. Org.launchcode is what you'll enter for, I can show this to you. Yeah, like right here for the group, org.launchcode. And and my thing is auto-correcting. Sorry, hang on. Boom. Okay. And good old Apple. Okay. And then if you have a project name, you generally use this convention that you know, is lowercase. So I'm lowercase hyphenated. So I might say, like, you know, class 8 demo or something like that. And you'll notice it automatically kind of assigns that as the name, assigns the entire package name as the group with the artifact together. And then you're going to select jar packaging, and I found that I'm using Java 17. There is no Java 13 option. And I know you guys were all having different issues, and I'm going to say this up front. Everybody has different computers. They have different machines, different operating systems, and different capacities. If your machine's older, you might not be able to run some of the newer versions of things. So you have to figure out what works for you. For me, I was able to use 17, no problem. If you have to go back to an earlier version, take a look at some of those conversations that were being had in Slack. There are some things there that worked for other people that might help you as well. And if you have done that and that still doesn't work, and if you do research online and that still doesn't give, no joy, then get together with a TA and ask for help. But you're going to need to be able to do this for Studio tonight. So you're going to want to figure it out. Okay, so you can do all of this, and then you want to add dependencies. So the two dependencies you want to add for now are Spring Web and Spring Boot Dev Tools. So I'll come over here to add dependencies, and there's Spring Boot Dev Tools right up on top, and I just need Spring Web, and there it is. Okay, so I have both of those, and then you just generate it, and it'll download a zip file for you. So I'll do that. And once I have that, I can unzip it and move it where I want it to be. And ideally, really, if using Git, you will have already cloned a Git repo that you've created on GitHub if you're creating a new project. And then you can just, once you unzipped it, you can put that project folder that's created from them right inside your GitHub repo, and you're good. That is one way to do this, but it would be super easy rather than having to initialize Git after the fact, but you can do that if you want to. I will do this for you. Just give me just a second here. Okay, so I put it in the wrong folder, so I'm going to move it back. Lecture examples, here we go. Okay, so I have created this project on using the Spring Initializer. I unzipped it, and this is what was inside the zip file, class 8 demo. And I just moved it inside my lecture app examples here. And I'm going to this is fine. I'm not going to put it in my repo here because I've already got a version of it in there. So I'll just put it here. And then this is what I will actually open from IntelliJ. Okay. So let's move on. So to get this application running in IntelliJ, you need to import it IntelliJ, which really, it doesn't have a separate import thing anymore, at least not on the version of IntelliJ that I have. It's just open a new project, basically, or open an existing project. But it will ask you to designate Gradle, and so you can do that. And then just, we want to familiarize ourselves with the file structure. Chris does a really good job in section 9.2.1 of your book of doing this in that video. And use the boot run to start up the application, kind of keep an eye on the logs. You should see Tomcat is serving to localhost 8080. And then you'll see, started whatever your project name is, application will be, what it says. And then you can actually go to the browser, and then you'll expect to see this white label error just because you don't have any content yet. So it can't find anything, and that's okay. But this is success. This is considered success. So let's do that. I'm going to open IntelliJ, and I'll pull it up so you guys can see it. This is what I want. All right, so we can say open, this choice in the middle here. And then I'm going to go to that folder, and lecture examples is what I want. And then double click that, and it'll open this project. So now I have this project that we're going to work with today. And you can see already that it's starting to build it with the Gradle daemon. And it's got an issue about the compatibility. So we're going to go over to, okay, yeah. So it does say source compatibility here is 17. So really what the problem that I have might be that the Gradle settings are not right. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to come up here into preferences and search for Gradle. And I get the Gradles, yeah, and see right here, this Gradle JVM, I need to change this to say 17 and then say okay. And I can rebuild it. Click on that, see if it'll rerun. Actually, down here, there you go. Rerun it from there. Okay, so build successful in 8 seconds. So as long as everything lines up with your Java applications in all those different places, you should be good. So I opened some of these files. This file as long as you have a high enough version here that's compatible, you're good. And then this other file that I actually had opened here, let's talk this through. So your application lives here. This is where the main method is for your application. It is automatically here. You don't really need to touch it for anything that we're doing. But you will be adding your own other classes and things. But that's where it is. That's where it's running everything from. And in the resources folder here, static is where we would put like JavaScript, CSS, images, things like that. Templates are where our HTML would go, and we're going to use Timeleaf. We're going to get there in a couple classes for the templates. And then application.properties is where some of the dependencies, configurations would be for like your database connections, things like that. And then the actual like build.gradle file down here that I had open, this is the one that I was checking the source compatibility here. But also, if you'll notice these dependencies down here, we have the Spring Boot dev tools and the starter web file. Those were the ones we added. Later on, as we add additional things to our projects and make them a little bit more complex, you'll see that we'll be adding more dependencies here. But for now, as long as you've used the Spring initializer with just those two, you'll see everything here. And of course, the test stuff as well that automatically comes in. Okay. The other thing to look at over here, there's a Gradle pane on the right. And wow, that's really, really wide. Okay. And if you look under tasks here, you'll see a number of things. Mostly what you're going to be using is the first time you run this, you'll want to double click on boot run here. And this is what actually will start up the application, start up the Tomcat server. And you can see right here, Tomcat started on port 8080, started class 8 demo application. And then if I want to go to the browser and actually view that, I need to get this down below my Zoom thing, apparently. Okay, I can go to localhost host 8080. And I get that error page that just says 404, we don't have anything to show you yet. That's normal. But at least I know that it's running. That's important, right? Everything's running. And I do want to stop. I meant to say this earlier. I was talking about how you might run into issues, with different versions or whatever. It is normal. It's a complete source of frustration. I remember going through it myself as a student, that you can have some frustrations with getting all this stuff working properly the first time. Getting everything set the way it needs to be for your computer. That's normal. It's not fun, but it's normal. So if you run into these things, don't feel like, you're singled out, you're the only one going through this. There's actually going to be quite a lot of people going through the same thing. And they might have different solutions. They might have the same solutions, but you guys talk to each other about it because you can help each other for sure. Okay, so I also wanted to, so down here, you can also see that you can run the tests here. There is a test already existing here that just, makes sure that it loads. And we can double click on test here to run it, and it'll bring up the test tab here. And it takes a second. But that'll tell you too that everything is okay, if this test passes. So that's always helpful. Okay, so down here, we're starting to use a lot of different things in this panel down here. There's actually several ones. So if you haven't already figured this out, you can go here. If you have version control, you can track your changes. I don't have anything to show you because there's no repo here actually. It's in my other version of this. But there's the run panel. You can look at all your to-dos listed here. Terminal, of course, if you need to use that for like Git commands and things. I prefer to do Git through the console, even though it is built into IntelliJ. And then, of course, the build one that you saw at the very beginning when it was, importing this from Gradle and getting it all set up. And there's also a dependencies tab. We don't have a ton to look at right now, but it just, you kind of you got to learn your way around all of this because you're going to need to go to different things at different times. So I wanted to point that out. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So that's pretty much it for like the setup. Now let's talk about how you create these controllers for the paths that you'll need for your actual web pages. Okay, so we're going to talk about a little bit of a review on HTTP things. We'll talk about the annotations used for controllers, the controller itself, routing, static GET requests, dynamic GET requests, and getting form input. And then I'm going to actually when we do the form input, I'm going to talk about both using it as a GET request and a POST request. And then I'm going to show you how to streamline everything. And this is a lot of the stuff that is in the videos and the textbook. I'm going to be replicating actually a lot of it because he does a great job taking you through it. But I'm going to give you some different examples, and we'll just kind of go through it together. Okay. So HTTP, you may remember from Unit 1 when you were first learning this, that there are different types of requests. GET is just to request data from the backend. POST is sending data to the backend. And of course, if you have like a database, you'd be using that to save data. Put would be updating data that has already been saved, and deleting is removing it. And an endpoint is just a term that you'll hear me use that just refers to the URL that provides the location of a resource on the server. So I'm going to kind of, use that a number of times when we're kind of looking at different things. Like in this example right here, you would see that, abcwebsite.org/products, that's the endpoint. And this one, localhost 8080/shop/products is also the endpoint. And then it actually has a, parameter there. The root path is always represented as just a slash. And additional path parameters, also known as URI parameters, can follow. Those are separated by slashes, like you see here with the /shop/product/209384. Query parameters can be used following a question mark in the form of key equals value, and you see that in the first example up here. So again, you've got the scheme, the host, the port, the path, and a query string in the case where you're using those. So it's important to understand all these different pieces that make up a URL, because each of them mean different things and do different things. And you're going to need to understand the differences as you're creating these controller methods. Okay, so there are a number of annotations that you can use within controllers to enable these requests and responses. And there's some that you use at the class level. The absolutely required one is controller. And you want to make sure there's different possible imports, and make sure you get the one that's org.springframework.stereotype. That's the right one. If you are doing kind of streamlined classes, which I'm going to show you at the end, or controllers rather, you would use request mapping and response body up at the class level. But at the method level, you can actually have get mapping for get requests, post mapping for post requests. That should not say post mapping, that should say request mapping. I'll fix that. With specifying multiple methods, and then the value, which is the path. And then you can also you add this response body when you're not using templates, which we are going to be doing tonight, because we're not using templates yet. We're just going to be giving it the content to put on the page directly as a string. So those are all used at the method level. You would tag your method with these annotations. At the parameter level, if you have query parameters, you'll use @requestParam. And if you're using path parameters, you'll use @pathVariable. Now, I'm going to introduce these to you a little bit at a time, so don't feel like now you need to know all of these and have them memorized. No, I just thought it would be useful to kind of have them all in one place and talk about the different levels at which they're used, because I remember when I was a student getting real confused real fast about which one of these do I use, where. Yeah, so I wanted to put them all in one place, so you can kind of see, and then I will demonstrate for you how they are each used individually. Okay, so let's talk about how to code a controller. You are going to create a new package called controllers inside your main project package. And then any controller classes you create can be named like a regular Java class, but you want to add controller on the end. And you want to make sure that inside the controller class, you've got that controller annotation right over there over the top. So let's do this. We'll come over here. I'm going to create a package called controllers inside class 8 demo. And then we're going to create a class inside controllers called gallery. controllers, because we are going to code this little website for an art gallery. Okay, and then of course, yeah, add the controller annotation there, and that will designate it as a controller class. So the next thing to do is to, specify some routes so that when the browser reaches out to the controller, it knows which one of these is going to be run, which one of the methods. So we'll have the most basic example, loading a home page. You use that / to represent that route at the root path. And then we will use a GET request for that, because all we're really doing is just returning content for the browser to render at localhost 8080. And we can also do additional routes. We'll do that in a second. Let's go ahead and do this one. Before we do that, I have some to-dos to add in here that will kind of help us along our way. Okay. So I'm going to write, yeah, I forgot to put this in here, corresponds to localhost 8080. Okay, so this very first one is just going to be about the root path. We'll use the annotation get mapping and give it the root path there. And we'll use response body. We'll use that on all of ours tonight because all we're doing is returning strings. We're not using templates yet. We'll get there. Okay, get homepage content. That's what we're retrieving with this get request. And I'm just for now going to return Midtown Art Gallery. That's all we'll do for now. I'll add a little bit more later. Okay, so I am running this. We've got it up on port 8080. So I'm just gonna command click to come here. And there we see it, Midtown Art Gallery right there. So that's great. All right, so static get requests, remember static just basically means that it's the same information, will always be the same information. It's just hard-coded. And that is what we are going to send once our get request is made. We'll send that back to the browser. So this next one is this get request for the collection route. And so it's the same exact process, right? We're going to add get mapping, add response body, define a public string method, return that content as a string. And then we just have to restart the application and go to the corresponding URL for the path we specified, which in this case is now going to be, localhost 8080/collection. So let's get this going. All right, at get mapping, put in /collection and response body, public string. I'll call it, let's see, get collection page content. That's straightforward. Okay, I'll just return. We have actually, let me put it in a paragraph because we can put a little HTML in here. We have an extensive collection of fine art. Okay, and we'll just leave it there. So let me stop this and rerun it. And now in here, I'm going to go to /collection. And we see our content right there for that particular route. Okay, so you can kind of see what's happening here, right? The browser is reaching out to the controller. The controller is saying, okay, what route did you ask for? If it's the home page, we receive this. And if it's the /collection, we receive this. So that's how we're going to continue to shape this by giving different content depending on what these routes are. All right. So you can also have dynamic get requests where you have information that is provided from the browser side that then will update the page with that information. And query parameters is one of the two ways to do that that we're going to talk about. So you would use the get mapping and response body just like before. But then you need to have a parameter inside your method, and you want to use the request param annotation on that parameter, as you can see over here. And then you'll be able to actually, use that variable however you want inside your method here. And you can, it'll provide this information at the map that you provide. So what we're going to do, we don't want to conflict with /collection because we already have get mapping for that. So I'm going to add an additional route here that's off of collection called /styles. Okay, so start with get mapping /collection /styles. So this is another destination. I am silly. I'm trying to put brackets on this like it's a method. It's not, or at least not a Java method. Okay, public string and get let's call this accept query param to make it clear. This is what this is an example of. Param from collection styles route. I know that's really, really long, and I see I have a typo here, and that's why this is complaining. Okay, and this is where we actually do need a parameter, and we're going to use request param. And we, give it a type just like you normally do with Java, and we'll call it style. So we're going to ask, what style of art do you want to see? And we can just return some text here. I'll have a little, header at the top, collection. And, actually, what we could do is use the style. Let's do this. Okay, I'm going to say style dot to uppercase. And then add on collection. So we can say what type of collection it is. Okay. And I have to close the H3 though. There we go. All right. And then on the next line, we can have like a paragraph that just says you are now viewing works of art in the, and we'll use our thing again, style. And close the paragraph. Okay. Yeah, that should do it. Okay, so this time we are going to, submit a query parameter with the key value pair style equals impressionism. And I'm going to actually just stop and start the application so it'll update with this new method we've got. There we go. And I'm going to click straight to this. And we have a problem. This should say collection /styles. Okay, so this is why it's important to pay attention to your routes. You want this to match where it is you're trying to go, and then add on the query param right there. So let me fix this. Yeah. And it looks like I forgot to close my H3. So let's fix that. Or maybe I just didn't. Yeah, I'm missing a little bracket there. Okay, stop and restart. Yeah, this is why it's good to like continually check things in the browser, do reality checks to make sure things are what you expect them to be. All right, that's what I was expecting to see. Impressionism collection. You're now viewing works of art in the Impressionism style. So we're getting, some nice dynamic rendering of the information that was provided by this query parameter. Now, regular people don't generally just type these in. You usually have user input through a form. So we're going to do that in a minute, but first we're going to talk about path parameters. Let me close a couple of these so it gets a little less cluttered up there. All right, stop the application, come back here. Okay, so path parameters are another way to have data be specified dynamically. It's very commonly used with like IDs for, items. And so, you're still going to use the get mapping with the path and the response body in this case. And you have your method and you will have a parameter, but this time you're going to use this annotation path variable. That's what you do for path parameters. And then, we'll restart the application and open the path, which in this case, because it's a path parameter, it's going to be slash, whatever the ID is. And you'll notice these curly braces, right? So this is how you basically indicate a placeholder for whatever value is given and passed in. And that way it will, just automatically know that's the ID of the information I'm supposed to be pulling up, which once we start working with databases is going to make a lot more sense. Okay, so we'll come over here and write this method. Get mapping, and this time slash collection, and then slash, and then our placeholder with the fancy brackets, and we'll say artwork ID. I need to spell it right though. There we go. Okay, so that's the path. And then response body, public string, and I'll say, accept path param from collections route. And we'll use path variable as the annotation, string, artwork ID. And then we'll return the information that we want. And I'm just going to copy this in, save a little time. So we can kind of do the same thing where we have this, collection at the top as a general thing and just say, here are details of artwork number, whatever. And of course, if we were pulling information from a database, we'd have access to the title and the artist and, what year it was created and all those kinds of things. And we would be able to kind of draw from that data to like produce a lot of information here. But right now we're just kind of covering the basics. So we're just going to, do these loose examples for simplicity's sake. So let's give that a try. I'm going to start this back up. And then we're going to go to this, localhost 8080/collection/1234. And there we go. Here are details of artwork number 1234. So it was able to take that parameter from the path and bring it into this method and use it right there. And then return that information back to the browser to display on the page as a GET request. Okay, so you should be seeing a kind of a pattern here. So this next part is where we actually are going to use a form instead of just typing things into the browser, bar at the top for the URL. So we can create a controller for another route, and we'll call it form, pretty straightforward. And then we're going to have it make a call to collection style. So we're going to start by using making a get call, and then I'm going to show you after that how to switch it over to post. So the user is going to see the information they just entered on the collection page after they submit it. So, and you'll notice that resulting URL right there actually is the route for the page that it's presenting for the other method that you already wrote, right? We wrote this method up here to, say, you're viewing works of art in the Art Nouveau style. And you also see here, there's an example of having a link to go back to the form. So we're going to put that in there as well. So, the kind of the syntax for this, you have to realize that the form controller method doesn't itself have a parameter because it's actually, using that other one. So we're going to make sure instead that the form has an action that points to the route that it should then do that request on. And you can have it do a get, you can have it do a post. We'll do, like I said, we'll do get first and then we'll change it to post. And with get, you can leave this off, right? Because it defaults to get. But if you're going to do post, you have to specify it. So that's why I've got it there. And then the input element has to have name equals style to correspond to that query param style that's in the other method. So you can kind of see that here, name equals style. So let's kind of code this out and I will show you, kind of how it all fits together. Okay. Then we're going to go and we're going to update some things with these. So let's see. All right, we want to get the information to display the form. So this is, this, when we do /form here with get, we're talking about not submitting the form, but actually displaying the form on the page. That's an important difference. The response body, and then public string, display, style, form. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to return a string and I'm going to save some time and paste it in. And like I said, we can leave this off and do this as a get request initially, just to show that it works. And then, so we've got HTML, we've got body, and then we've got this form. And I just have a little paragraph, and then I have an input, type equals text, name equals style. Again, that corresponds to this request param up here, style, because this route is the one that we want it to get on the when it's submitted. And so that action on the form corresponds to that, so that the browser will say, okay, when this form is submitted, I know what I'm supposed to do next. I'm supposed to go fetch this page. And then it calls, it reaches out again to our controller and it's going to call this method because that's what corresponds to that. And then it'll say, okay, and here's the value for style that you can then display on the page. Let's give it a go. All right, so we're going to go to localhost 8080/form. Enter the style of art you'd like to view. So I can say Impressionism, and I get Impressionism collection. You are now viewing works of art in the Impressionism style. But where do I go from here? That's where it's kind of nice to have like a link that goes back. So let's add some things here to make it a little easy to navigate around these pages we've created. Up at the top here, I want to change out this return statement here so that it actually returns, so a little bit of styling, and it'll say, view our collection of fine art, and have a link here that just links to /collection, which is the other route here. And when we do that, when we click on that link, it's going to reach out to the controller and say, okay, run this method that corresponds to /collection. And then we should see this. So there, what we want to do is actually have additional information here that will allow us to go to the form. So we can say, click here if you want to select a different style. And there again, the href link here is /collection/form. With the way I have this right now, this actually needs to be form. And yeah, on this side, okay. Because it is straight off of this controller, which is just /, and then I have form /form. I copied this from a different file. You'll see that in a second. So yeah, so click here, select different style. You can click on that, and then it will go to /form, and we should see this displayed instead. So this gives us a way to navigate around our site a little bit. So let me stop it and restart it, and we'll practice that. We'll go straight to the top. We'll go to localhost.8080 and do it from the beginning. Okay, Midtown Art Gallery. Welcome, view our collection of art. If I click on this, it goes to the /collection. We have an extensive collection of fine art. Click here to select a different style. So I click here and enter, Art Nouveau and submit it. And now we're at /collection/styles ? Style equals art plus nouveau. So this is our query parameter one instead. And so now it's providing the content that's supposed to come back from that method, which is this one right here. /collection/styles with a query parameter. So you can kind of see now how this is all connecting to where we can move around. the browser will reach out as many times as it needs to get the content for these different sections, and it uses whatever information we give it through these parameters, which can, be tied to a form the way we see it here. Okay. To change this to post, let's see, I don't have a slide for this. I may or may not have a slide for this. Yeah, using post instead of get. Okay, so it uses method equals get by default, but you have to actually explicitly add method equals post if you want to make it a post request. But then you have to remember that your /collection/styles method, this should say, which you can actually, see here, form action. It can't just have get mapping anymore if you want to be able to have it be post mapping as well. So we would need to change that. And if you want to be able to have it handle both, you're going to have to use this request mapping and give it these arguments, method and value. And method can have multiple things inside these little fancy braces here, separated by commas. And you can have request method.get, request method.post, as well as other methods if you wanted, to give this the ability to accept more than one type of request. And then the value is just that route that is specified for this. And again, this is from another file, so it's going to look a little different once we move it. But let's see. Let's go make sure this works here, and then I'm going to show you the next step, and you'll see why some of this is going to change. Method equals post. Okay, so we're saying now we want this to be post instead of the form to post instead of get. It does not change this, because keep in mind, this is about displaying this information on the page at this route. It has nothing to do with the submission itself. This is in order for the browser to know what comes next when you are trying to submit the information. And so that's tied up here to /collection/styles. Excuse me. So this is where instead of doing get mapping, we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to use this request mapping instead. There it is. And we will say method equals, and then give it multiple ones, and we'll say request method.get will be one of them, and request method dot post will be another. And then the second thing here is to give it the route. So we will say value equals, and then this is where it's going to be collection.style. So this is the same thing that it shows, right above here, right? But in this case, we have to, allow for these. So we have to separate it out, and we have to use these, value equals here. So there's a little extra syntax when you're doing it this way, but it does make it possible to use the exact same method for more than one request type in case you needed to do that. So now everything else should be the same. And because this is now set to post upon submission to that same thing, we should be okay. So I'm going to stop this and restart it. And let's start at the top. I'm going to view the collection. We're going to go to the form. We'll enter cubism. And there we go. It works. So it posted it this time instead of getting. But then it called the other one and got the unique information because of this. Okay, so that's all wonderful. But you can imagine that with a more complex website, web application, you could end up with a really big controller with a lot of methods really fast. So we can streamline these controllers and actually separate them out and group them together by related methods and related routes, more importantly. So you're going to use request mapping at the class level and set the shared route. Add response body at the class level if there's no templates at play. And then we can very much simplify the annotations on the methods once we have done some things at the class level. And then we have to adjust the annotation, adjust the routes, because they're going to be based on whatever is set at the top of the class. And that's probably going to be more specific than just the root path. Oops, went too far. That's okay. We're going to come over here to the code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this new class, and I'm going to call it collection controller, because a lot of our routes here have to do with the collection specifically. Okay, we're going to add controller, and then we're going to actually also add the request mapping, and we're going to give it /collection. So now everything inside here, all the methods are going to be based on collection instead of being based on the root path. And then of course we can also add response body here. And that means that everything that we had going on in the other file no longer needs to be, each one will not have to have this on anymore. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. So we can copy these over and then adjust them. So I'm leaving this here because this has to do with the root path. We're going to leave it here. But this one is /collection. We can, I'm actually just going to copy it and then I'll comment it out so there's no conflict. We'll do that one in here and we will grab this one. And because that's very clearly about collections, and really everything else we've got in here is about the collections page. So we can pretty much just grab all of it, and then I'll show you how these adjustments are made. All right. So again, I'm commenting all these out so they're not in conflict, because the application as a whole is going to be aware of both of the controllers. And you can only have the mapping done in one place, not in both. So again, I'm just leaving the root path method in here. Everything else is going to be over in here that has to do with these collection pages. So here we go. We could take response body off of everything. Let's do that first. That's the first kind of easiest way to streamline. Oops, here and here. Because it's at the top now, and that means it applies to all of them. And then because request mapping is set with this route collection, we don't actually have to have anything here. Otherwise, it would be /collection/collection. That is not what we want. So we will just use an empty string here, and that will be sufficient. And now that we have form inside of here, that means it's going to be at /collection/form. So I need to update this. And let's see, the next one, value is collection.style. So there again, I can take the /collection off because it's already going to be based on /collection, and then it'll be /styles after that. And then in here, everything is straightforward. All right, for this one, we can take this back to be just the artwork ID. And then for the form, here, we still want the action to be /collection/styles because that it needs to correspond to that whole thing. So it'll be this plus this, and that's correct. And we're going to keep it post. I think I've got everything. Let's see in here. Yeah, because this is still what we want. We want the main collection page to be linked here. So I think I have covered all of it. Let's stop it and restart it and take a look. All right, and I'm just going to go back to the beginning. All right, we got our main page. Go to our collection. Click here to go to the form, and now it's /collection/form. Now you see, and I will put in impressionism again. Why not? And I get /collection/styles. So it looks like we've got everything set up correctly so that it will enter the information as expected and give us yeah, you will notice that one thing that's different is that it doesn't actually show the query params here the way that it did before. Which is an interesting side effect of moving this in here. But oh, and it's because we did a post. That's why. It's because it's a post, because we're using it as both. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And this is much cleaner, right? Everything is together that belongs together. These things that are done up at the top level make it easier to kind of clean these up and not have so many annotations on every single thing. So it's really just about paying attention to how you're building these routes based on whatever is at the class level, and then adding on to that for each of the separate methods after that. Okay, and with that, we can actually go back to the studio. All right, so for studio, you are going to use Spring Initializer to create a new project, just like I did. You're going to create a controller, skills controller, to handle your routing for your view. And then you're going to create a form, and you want to make sure that it successfully updates the HTML back at the homepage. So your directions here kind of walk you through that. Refer back to the chapter if you don't remember how to do specific things. But this should be very straightforward. The one thing that is different is it asks you to use some additional HTML units that you haven't used for, elements that you haven't used for a minute. So if you're not super familiar with HTML and you just a little bit of in unit 1 and that's all you've ever done, you might want to review that. You can go look at, W3 schools and places like that online, or look at your unit 1 textbook. But, H1, H2, OL, for ordered list, select elements that have options. You want to kind of get a refresher on all of that, because that's part of this. But I will, when you get done, it should look like this. And then you can actually, like, the bonus missions would be like, reformatting the page to use a table instead of an ordered list, adding a new path to the site to display the information from the completed form instead of displaying it directly on the homepage. So you can kind of see how far you get and get into that. And we'll come back here. Let's just come back here at 8:10. Sound good?
Thanks, Carrie.
Yeah.